It's easy to think about low points in Disney's history. There's certainly eras that different generations have gone through for that company, be it when the studio was just starting out, or the era after Walt Disney's death, or the horrible remake era that we're somewhat getting out of. Keyword somewhat. Or even that very racist era that we shouldn't forget about. Seriously, what black person hurt you for you to want to do this? There's really no justification. But an era that managed to be unsubstantial while at the same time substantial, just go with me on this, was the early 2000s era. You see, Disney was in their more experimental period during the 2000s where they were willing to get out of their comfort zone. They gave us more out of the box fare of their usual stick of the musicals or reinventing old stories. Of course, some of them were based around old stories, but most of them were fairly original. We got unique movies like Emperor's New Groove and Lilo and Stitch, and some less unique like Brother Bear and Home on the Range. But there was one movie that came out that helped kick everything off, that being Atlantis The Lost Empire. Now, it's no secret this movie didn't do that well at the box office when it first dropped, and at the same time people didn't really know what to make of it. It had strong characteristics that should get people on board, an interesting plot, unique characters, and a darker edge than what came before, but sadly no one would stick to it. But it still is an important film that I think deserves to be looked at as to why it couldn't really grasp an audience like its predecessors or successors. Though, looking back on the film, it's easy to say racism wasn't the biggest factor. Before we get to the subject of this video, I would just like to say doing YouTube can be fairly stressful. There's long hours in writing up the scripts and editing it all together afterwards, so sometimes I like to take a load off for my downtime. One good way to do that is with Cheech and Chong's Cruise Chews gummies. These gummies come from that great duo that we all know and love that gave us classic comedy movies and skits. They decided they wanted everyone to indulge in those mellow moods we know them for with these full spectrum gummies. Cheech and Chong's Cruise Chews ease all that tension you might be feeling after a long day. With these gummies, you'll feel all kinds of relaxed. They give you a good mellow feeling that lets you live up to the name of the actual gummies. They're made from that good stuff in plants that everyone likes to indulge in for that calm and relaxed feeling. And the best part is they taste pretty good too. But I'm not just telling you about a simple product, I'm telling you about a good deal that you can get in on right now. If you go to my link on the screen or in the description, you can get your own Cruise Chews with 50% off. Yes, I'm not just blowing up smoke on this. These $60 gummies can be yours with 50% off. Don't miss out on relaxation that you never felt before with Cheech and Chong's Cruise Chews gummies. Be sure to hit the link and fasten your seatbelts because it's heavy stuff that'll blow you away. Thanks to Cheech and Chong for sponsoring this video, and now let's get back to it.
Your granddad had a saying, our lives are remembered by the gifts we leave our children. This journal is his gift to you, Milo. Atlantis is waiting.
A thing to point out about Atlantis is how unique of a film it is. Let's face it, by this point Disney was kind of getting into a comfortable place when it came to its movies from the Renaissance era. Not to say any of those movies were stale or anything, but you could say they fit a particular mold that some were getting tired of. But Disney thankfully understood that things do need to change if they want to keep people invested in them. They started getting experimental with their works with the likes of Fantasia 2000 and then Dinosaur. Two films that pushed the envelope a little, but had diminishing returns. I can't speak much for Dinosaur since I didn't watch that movie, and judging by certain clips,
what you need is a little help from the Love Monkey.
The Love Monkey?
Ow, baby! Ow!
I don't think I needed to, but it was Disney's first foray into a fully CG animated film, outside of Pixar, which they didn't own at the time. But for what they managed to do on their own, they managed to actually pay off well in terms of the design of that movie. Fantasia 2000 was certainly a cool idea to bring back, but obviously you weren't going to get kids to sit still to watch it. It was very much only for adults who wanted to appreciate classical music with amazing animation. Though it did show off amazing new techniques for animation at the time. But that brings us to Atlantis. This felt like a proper culmination of what they wanted to build towards with its more mature themes and darker tones, but as we saw, that didn't pan out well. The story is simple but fairly effective. A young aspiring explorer named Milo seeks to uncover the lost city of Atlantis. He's joined by a ragtag team of mercenaries to find the city. They soon discover the city and find it has inhabitants, which changes the plans of the mercenaries that join Milo because they plan on stealing from Atlantis. Now Milo must rescue Princess Kaida, for she holds the power to save the city from destruction. It's not that far out there for a Disney movie, but the way it goes about things is what makes it stand out. There's a more adult attitude that surrounds this film, especially when it comes to, say, death.
That guy won't be going home to his kids.
Yeah, they get pretty real here, so it has what it takes to be interesting, though after recently rewatching this movie, I can say I think it's a great film with some shortcomings that can't be ignored and ultimately led to its downfall. The film surprisingly is easy to get into. It doesn't try to waste time with a bunch of massive exposition about the lore, which is something I think many could learn from. It gives just the basics for the story so you can follow along better. If anything, a sequel would have worked better. They did try that, and obviously that bottomed out because nobody was about to watch 3 episodes compiled into one big movie. But that's another story. But it did have some more tantalizing reasons to follow along.
You do swim, do you not?
Oh my.
There's just enough for you to have investment, but sadly not enough for you to care for a lot of what's happening. Take for instance the first act. We get everything we need when it comes to the plot and the main character, but the first act sort of moves at breakneck speed. First we get Milo having to prove his findings so he can go on an expedition. Then we meet some rich guy who decides to help fund Milo's expedition. Then he goes on it with a ragtag team of renegades and a group of 200 crew members. Then their submarine gets attacked and they lose over half of their crew. Keep in mind, this is just the first 20 minutes. I didn't even mention the part at the very beginning with Kita's mom being taken away, but that's so much to pack into just 20 minutes. Sadly, none of this gets to stick for a lot of people, which is bad because we should feel something for when the crew gets cut down to size. They give a small moment for everyone to mourn the lives that were lost, but we needed time to get to know them ourselves. It's an hour and 40-minute movie that gets to the action and peril, but a little too quickly. There's so many characters, but we sadly don't get the time needed to connect with them. The major thing for the movie was the sub that ends up getting wrecked so early on. This was a selling point of the movie that made it seem like it was a major thing we were going to see a lot of, but it's gone within 5 seconds of being introduced to it. They even gave it this majestic ass shot that was all over the advertisement, but there's moments like the camping scene that would have been great during that time on the sub, building the bond between the crew members and Milo, so when the destruction of the sub happens, you actually feel bad for everyone that died. The pacing needed some work in order for it to stick for audiences. If it was a full 2-hour joint, that would have fixed it on that front. These are very fun and engaging characters, but they do leave you wanting. I want to see more of Dr. Sweet and Vinny and Audrey and such. Hell, we could have used more Mole even. Speaking of, we gotta address the molehill that became a mountain. Mole is definitely not a bad character, but he does hurt the mood of the film. He's supposed to be the character made to entertain the kids. He's wacky and over the top, and we're supposed to be endeared by him, but sadly he just shifts the tone too much. His scenes usually are during the important moments, but his weirdness can take you out of the moment. It kinda is indicative of a bigger problem with the movie where there's some major dissonance going on. There's just this feeling of dissonance that occurs when you go from scenes like this to scenes like this.
Class of 66. We stayed close friends till the end of his days. He'd drag me along on some of his dang fool expeditions.
The Disneyisms can be distracting, and it makes it hard to place a finger on what to make of the film. Some felt it was too Disney for it to work for an adult movie, and others felt it was too adult to work as a Disney movie. There's definitely stuff in there that's harsher than your regular Disney fare, but you can't focus as hard on it because there's too much silly stuff going on. No one could tell exactly who the movie is for, which is what hurt even other animated Disney films at the time. Not to mention all the depth and major violence that's in the movie that adds to the confusion. You can't have scenes like this.
I won't sugarcoat it, gentlemen. We have a crisis on our hands. But we've been up this particular creek before, and we've always come through, paddle or no paddle. I see no reason to change that policy now.
And follow up with scenes like this. It needed to pick its audience it wanted to go for more. It had the proper makings to gain more of a cult following if it fixed those parts up. But we also have another thing that holds this movie back.
I love it when I win.
Yeah, we gonna address you in a minute. But first...
Mohit bueno, Grunik.
Rourke, this was not a part of the plan.
Plans changed, Doc.
And now we come to a big problem for the movie. Rourke. A guy who has such a weak motivation for a villain by just wanting to be rich. Even though just going on the expedition was enough to make him rich anyway. Granted, this was Disney when they were starting to get stale with their villains, from Clayton to whatever the hell this guy's name was.
Who the fuck is...
By this point, Disney started getting pretty weak on the villains, with a few exceptions like Gantu. Rourke is no exception by the fact that he was played really low. By that, I mean he doesn't have much of a strong presence. There's no flair or sense of intrigue when it comes to his personality. I mean, seriously.
I love it when I win.
That's the big quotable from him. He doesn't hold a candle to other Disney villains that came before, mainly having to do with the fact that he's just in this for the money. All the other crew members are also in it for that, and that was something that bothered even me as a kid. And it's just a little sad that this is what kind of shaped a few Disney villains going forward. Constantly we kept getting the secret reveal villain where it's like, oh, they betrayed the main character or they turned into a different person. It's not as egregious here because Rourke seems like the same person from the beginning of when he's introduced to the end when he dies. You know, nothing feels like it's out of place for him, so it's a bit better, but still, it's annoying that it shaped the future of Disney moving forward. The big betrayal was something that never sat right with me at all. It's not even that it's a bad idea, it's just the execution for it wasn't that strong. When it comes to betrayals, you want even the audience to feel hurt by it. We should be just as hurt as the character or characters going through it, but we don't really have that due to the fact that we don't really know most of the crew. We got the standout crew members who are interesting enough, and we get a little bit of backstory of them during the camping scene, and that was good, but like I said, it should be earlier, and I do feel bad about their betrayal, but at the same time, it's not like we knew them that well. It kind of doesn't hurt that much that they screwed Milo and the Atlanteans over. It felt like it could have worked with just the crew helping to save Atlantis, and that's it. The betrayal feels a smidge tacked on. Honestly, I think there's some stuff that could have been done to make this one of Disney's greats. Since they're so hell-bent on making remakes and shit, why not do it for this one and fix the more notable problem? For one, extend the movie. It already has a good length to it.
Pause. What the fuck?
Not that kind of length, you pervs. The runtime is perfect for a movie with less people in it. The characters we got definitely need more time to breathe and for the audience to enjoy them. A decent remedy would be to add 20 minutes to it. Make it a full 2-hour feature and have 10 of those minutes for the first act and the other to the second act. For the first 10, that time should be on the sub while Milo's trying to connect with the crew. This will make the betrayal hurt more, and you can cut down on montage time for the second act, which really should have been dedicated to more time with Milo connecting with the crew or us getting to know more of the crew. The other 10 should be to the crew getting to know Atlantis and connecting with the people. Now, you could still have the betrayal happen, but this time there is a clear thing beating away at their conscience. They said they never really hurt anyone to get to the treasures they hunted, so play more into that. Or don't have that happen and it's just something weighing on their minds and they gotta make a decision on whether to save Atlantis or not. Either way, the big thing is to change Rourke. Now, for me, I would have him not be a villain at all and just have him be a respectable leader to the crew. Just adding more likability to them as a whole and getting rid of the just wanting to get rich crap. They already are going to be rich by discovering the lost ancient civilization, like come on. And even by the end we saw that they were willing to give up some gold to these people as a thank you, so it's like this really was so in vain. Of course, Keeping Rourke a villain is also viable, but the added time fixes up the betrayal on that part as well as adds some more characterization. He was too bland to be memorable. Give him some flamboyancy or something, that's really what he needed. Or a more commanding presence, regardless of anything. The other big thing is tone. There needs to be a set tone you're trying to get across. Of course, you can play around with tone in certain ways, but the one in the original is a bit all over the place. One minute you feel like you're watching a good hard PG 80s film, the other minute feels like you're watching a silly G-rated film. You gotta pick one and not split the difference. And obviously you choose the hard PG since you would be able to get across more. Mole was a big player on this front, just tone him down some. He can be the weird one, but he's gotta have more jokes that feel akin to the mature themes you're going for. One other small thing would be to remove the character cookie. He doesn't add much and honestly could just be Mole, cause it seems like he's just a crotchety type with nothing else happening with him. So Mole can fill his role just fine, you know, make Mole a crotchety weird guy or something. That works just fine. These are all just things I think can make Atlantis great if it were to get a remake, but at the end of the day, these are just suggestions that I think could work. If you all disagree with me, I'd like to hear what you guys think would work to fix Atlantis if a remake were to happen or something like that. I just want this to be the best it can be and get the recognition it deserves.
Sure you want to stay? There's a hero's welcome waiting for the man who discovered Atlantis.
I don't think the world needs another hero. Besides, I hear there's an opening down here for an expert in gibberish.
Atlantis was one of those films you watched and very much enjoyed as a kid, but as you get older, you get that it just needed more time to cook. It had all the makings to be a great epic film with fun characters, interesting lore and such without having too much overwhelming stuff for the audience. The animation is phenomenal and holds up really well, like just God, dude, these scenes look amazing. But you wanted more because it needed it. I wanted to feel hurt by the crew betraying Milo, but I sadly couldn't. I wanted to feel hurt when they lost so many of the crew, but I couldn't. The solution for all these problems are very fixable. It needed some more time in the oven, and I'm sure the problems I noticed would have gotten resolved if it had that time. But that stands more to how strong of a film Atlantis actually is. I'm still impressed with this movie 20 plus years later. I appreciate what the movie had to offer and just wanted more of it. I don't throw out these suggestions to act as if I absolutely know what's best for it, but more what I think could help it out. Doubtful any of these get implemented if there was an Atlantis remake or something in the works, but you know.
A man can dream, though. A man can dream.
It didn't get the recognition it deserved back then because of those shortcomings, but it left a strong enough impression to have people recognize it all this time later. But that's just a thought.
Thank you.